the Lake District is even more nature depleted than London.
A pivotal moment where that could go either way.
I did it mainly for health reasons. I had more energy and I got ill less often.
This is Behind the Noise. I'm Mark Farquhar, and this is Amy Bray. Welcome, Amy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it took some planning, but we got there in the end. So, the planet, our ecosystem, it's a massive subject. There's about 100 or 1,000 different ways we could start this conversation. But the first thing that came to my mind was what scares you the most about where we are currently? That's a big question to start on, but.
Yeah, I think for me, so obviously the headlines are so full of doom and gloom pretty much all the time. And probably the scariest fact for me is actually not even climate change. We surpassed 1.5 degrees of warming last year, which was pretty scary in itself. But for me, it's the rate that we're losing species. So we've lost 60% of the world's wildlife since 1970.
Wow.
And the fact that we have those kind of staggering statistics and we're irreplaceably losing so many incredible species, and humankind doesn't seem to be acting with any kind of urgency. That's probably what scares me the most.
Yeah. So when I looked you up, I've saved some of the comments like just another shouty environmentalist. Cumbria's answer to Greta Thunberg. I'm sure you've heard that before, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, just another mouthy environmentalist. But it's like they're just lumping you into a category of people who do that, and they're the ones who usually get the headlines.
Yeah.
The ones who do like ridiculous protests or just say ridiculous things to get attention. But I think we need more people who are like yourself, more educated, well-spoken, who know what they're talking about. You don't have to shout it. I mean, if you say it, people still listen. You don't have to shout or do something ridiculous to get your point across.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually really hate being called Greta Thunberg or the UK's answer to Greta Thunberg because of exactly that. Greta she's brought climate change to global awareness by being angry and by shouting at people. And yes, that works, but my approach is completely from the opposite end of the spectrum. So actually, how do we get as many people on board with our messaging? And for me, that's using positivity and hope and fun and communicating on people's levels, having nice, friendly conversations with people and working from the grassroots up. For me, that is the only way in which
education.
Yeah, exactly.
Or how do you say it that's going to resonate with enough people rather than just going too advanced for the scientists? You know what I mean? So
or dividing people by kind of having really divisive views or, for example, the Just Stop Oil protests. Yes, I can totally understand where those protesters are coming from, but actually they've caused so much hatred and so many people to actually dislike the whole environment movement, which is quite unhelpful, really.
Yeah, so it's like what are we going to teach? What are the key things for the next generation, like our kids? What are they going to grow up thinking? Or like a lot depends on what do we teach them. Yeah,
and I think young people, there are so many passionate young people who want to do everything they can to protect our planet and are really scared about our future. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of young people who don't really care and who are misinformed and who are buying fast fashion and all of that. But I think for those young people who do care, it's so important to try and empower them and make them feel agency instead of shutting them down or making them feel like they can't make a difference. Because, the climate crisis is such a global, overwhelming issue. Sometimes you think, well, what on earth can I do as one small person?
So you hear that a lot, don't you? What difference can I make? But it's a case of like people like yourself educating people. Like if we all do something, then as a group we're all doing something. Things like turning your tap off or making sure all electricity's off. Or I've noticed some companies are doing some initiatives to save people, like if you turn all your power off in your house for half an hour from 6 p.m. till 6:30, we'll give you some points towards something. And not only does it help with the environment, it saves people money as well, because that's the other thing that people are bothered about as well.
Yeah, there are so many changes that we can make that are financially better for our pockets too.
Car sharing as well.
Yeah, or buying secondhand or like mending
cycling
what we already have.
All sorts of things that have been. These things have been happening for years. Certainly, car sharing and like employers doing like paid to cycle to work or things like that. So there's always things we can do, but how much responsibility lies on big business in all this?
Yeah, well, I really feel that this kind of false dichotomy between is it business that needs to change, or is it consumers who need to change? Is it people? It shouldn't really exist, because in order to fix the climate crisis, we need levels on all levels of society. We need everyone to change. And that looks like people making values, making decisions based on our values. So instead of just making decisions based on how much it costs to us, actually like trying to choose and buy and spend our money on what is good for the planet. And when we do that collectively, then suddenly businesses are going to have to change. Like with the plastic bags and kind of big supermarkets, they phased out plastic bag because of consumer demand. And on the other kind of top-down approach, we need governments to make it easier for us as consumers to make the right decision, because sometimes it's too expensive or the infrastructure's not there. So for things like insulating houses and creating better public transport, we obviously need the government to be able to do that too.
Yeah, but I was thinking of big businesses and politicians in the same sort of category as who are the people that can say the things that are going to have the biggest impact and the widest reach. And for me, that would be them.
Yeah, I think that every massive change in history has usually started with a small group of citizens who are trying to make change. And yes, that can seem super overwhelming to start with. But our message another way is that if one person was to spread a message to 10 people in one day, the next day, those 10 people each went and told 10 more, and so on.
Yep.
It would just take 10 days for the whole world to have been inspired. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of our voices to help to create this kind of systemic change. And yes, there's actions that we can do in our lives by the way we consume and travel and eat and all of that. But there's also a huge responsibility for us to vote and to volunteer and to protest and to use our voice to make business and governments listen to us as well.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned Another Way. So let's talk about that. So it's a charity that you set up when you were how old?
16.
How old are you now?
21 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that come about then?
Loads of people ask me that. I feel like it just happened by an accident, really.
Well, it sounds really like a gargantuan task or something really big to set up a charity. It just sounds...
Yeah, well, it started a long time ago, I think. So I always adored our ocean, and that has been my major passion. And when I was really little, I really wanted to be a marine biologist.
Which you are?
I am now, yes.
There you go.
And then I kind of read and found out about all the threats that are happening to our planet. And I just felt like I needed to do something myself about it. So I started really small at home with kind of individual actions that I was trying to change. And then I created the first ever youth-led climate protest in the UK when I was 14. But then I felt that the key to all of this was inspiring other people and educating people. So that's when I set up this initiative called Devotion to Ocean. And I had all these fun awareness session activities for kids, like making life-size albatross out of old newspapers and this game that illustrates kind of microplastics in the ocean. And that became so popular, I was going into schools like 3 days a week, missing my own school. So yeah, in 2019, I decided, well, I basically Googled on the bus, how do you register a charity? And then filled in the forms on the Charity Commission website. Got rejected the first time, so then I tried yet another
grounds?
way.
Do you remember why they rejected you? You're 16, go away.
They're just very technical and picky with their wording.
Okay, right.
But anyway, we got through. So yeah, I was 16 and I had a charity to run.
So what was the vision for it then?
So we wanted to bring about and inspire collective behavioural change. And at that time, no one else was really talking about that. So a lot of people were protesting, a lot of people were writing petitions, but no one was actually coming about this from a positive standpoint on the fact that actually we can make a huge difference personally by changing our behaviour and then inspiring others to do the same. So at the centre of it all, that was our message.
Cool. So what's been the development of it since then? What have you done? What's some of the things that you've done since then?
Yeah, so the awareness sessions and talks was a massive part. So I was still visiting loads of schools. I had a lot of media attention as well when I was 16. I think it was probably quite unusual for a 16-year-old to run a charity. So yeah, a particular highlight was coming face to face with Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain.
Ooh, yeah, I did see some of that, yeah.
And then we also...
He probably thought you were going to be like a Greta Thunberg. Oh, he wanted you to be.
I think
and you weren't.
So. Yeah. I did a lot of research beforehand and kind of figured out a way to get round his annoying arguments. So, anyway, he sided with me in the end, so that was all good.
You must have made some good points then.
Yeah. And then we did a lot of community events as well. So back for our launch, we got 600 people to climb the Wainwright Mountains in the lakes.
Wow.
In support of our message. And that was just such a fantastic day because it brought so many people together. And sometimes, like when I was saying we feel so overwhelmed, sometimes we feel completely alone and like no one else is making a change. So why should we? So community for me is such an important tool to help motivate us. And we've planted 30,000 trees as well with our community.
Really good.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite things. I think it's such a tangible thing for people to do, plant a tree in the soil. Yeah. People just love it. And then we have done a lot of work with scientists as well. So trying to bring science to the public in a way that everyone can understand.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then our latest project is Power of 10, based on our motto, but it's helping to support young people in schools to take climate action. And
okay, yeah. Well, that makes sense with the power of 10, of telling 10 people and they 10 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we found that actually a lot of young people are really suffering with mental health issues because of the climate crisis, and also feeling really unsupported. They don't really know how to try and fix it, where to start.
I'm sure that all the headlines don't help with that either.
No, not at all. And they're even bullied in school for actually speaking out, which is really sad.
It's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah. So we're trying to support them through an app that we've developed.
Okay.
So it's the first ever digital space for young change makers, and they can kind of share ideas, advice, challenges with other people who are just as passionate as them, and access a toolkit on how to start taking climate action too.
Cool. So what sort of things does it advise? What sort of things does it say?
So it's kind of action at every level of society, like I was saying. So everything from home challenges, how to eat less meat, or our net zero climate challenge, to guides on having conversations, or how to do tree planting in your school, or run beach cleans, or litter picks. Then we've got slide decks, so they can have an assembly that they can give in their school. So in Cumbria, those have already been given to 3,000 school children through users. And then we have guides on making systemic change as well. So petitions, contacting your MP, starting a social media campaign.
That's really cool. It does seem, the balance between educating us now and the next generation, that's kind of like where this could all rest, in terms of if people are brought up in the right environment, then they will be nice to the environment and always be thinking about that, and then they'll pass that on to their kids. Seems like that is we're in a pivotal moment where that could go either way. Yeah,
I think we are running out of time. We don't have a lot of time to act on this.
This is what I was saying. Like, how bad is it? Like, how far away are we from like something really bad happening?
I think it's a lot worse than people think. I think the media tries to, it doesn't paint it in enough urgency. When we just talk about 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, what does that mean to the normal person? Nothing.
Well, sometimes really. I feel like it does paint it in a better picture, but still nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't. It just seems to go over people's heads.
I mean, there is some pretty scary stuff already happening with wildfires and heat waves and droughts and floods. Even in Cumbria, we've had so many floods. And that's just not normal, but it is the new normal. That's going to keep on happening. And
it's weird to think there's some people who are adamant that we're not affecting the climate at all, that this would be happening without us anyway.
Yeah, well...
I struggle to believe that.
There's only a very small percentage of people that still believe that, but somehow they have louder voices than everyone else.
I think on a very gradual level it would happen. I think we're definitely accelerating it.
Exactly. It's happening way faster than has ever happened in history, and that species can adapt to. So... the planet will survive in the future. Whether humans will survive without our food systems and without shelter and without, sea level rise will make most of the world's cities underwater by the end of this century.
Or what things like a famous species of animal that is no longer extinct, that'll make people go, whoa.
Yeah.
Or one of the most powerful videos I saw years ago was when there was a turtle that had a straw stuck up his nose. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
And they were trying to get out for ages, and I was just like, it's plastic.
Yeah.
It's just, that stuck with me. I'll never forget that.
It's so heart-wrenching. My best friend is also a marine biologist. She's out in Cyprus helping conserve turtles, and she has to dissect the dead turtles that wash up, and she's just like pulling out handfuls of plastic from them. It's just, she just goes home and cries because it's just so awful to watch.
So there's a series on YouTube. Well, it was on TV, now it's on YouTube, called Survivor Man, where Les Stroud goes various places all over the world and he teaches survival things. And he says it's good, but it's sad. It's good for him, but it's sad that wherever he goes, the most remote place in the world, he'll find some trash, some rubbish, something that he can use, obviously, in a survival situation. But like, it shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Yeah, one of our science advisors, he has, in a submarine, dived to the deepest points of every ocean.
Wow.
And at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, he found plastic bags, plastic toothbrushes, plastic. This is like 2 kilometers beneath our ocean. And yet the plastic toothbrush that someone used to brush their teeth.
Wow. It's just gone.
Yeah.
That's just, I saw there's a few companies now that are doing those barges that like scoop up all the plastic and try and put them in. I don't know what they do with them, but they try and get them out of the ocean. And I'm hoping that all these initiatives to stop plastic use is going to make it less and less plastic end up in the ocean. I don't know if you know of anything, if that's actually starting to happen.
Yeah, well, the ocean cleanup is one such initiative, and they are focusing on big rivers where plastic enters the ocean in the first place, and then trying to clear out the big areas that plastic ends up, where it accumulates within currents. But the amount that they're picking up is such a tiny fraction.
Yeah. And
yes, they're recycling it, but actually we need that as a good solution, but we also need to turn the tap off of the...
Stop it happening in the first place. Yeah.
So we need people to consume less plastic. And the Greenpeace just did this big plastic count in the UK. And they said that the average household throws out 9 million pieces of plastic a year. That's every single person in the UK.
Wow.
But that's a huge amount that we then have the power to change as individuals.
Yeah.
Like my family went single-use plastic free. That was kind of the first thing we did.
I bet that was your initiative, was it?
Yeah. Dad was very annoyed because he had to give up crisps for a while. But
he got over it.
Well, then a company made these like biodegradable crisp packets, so that was good. But it was just so difficult because you walk down the supermarket and everything is wrapped in plastic. But throughout that kind of journey, you know, we had to make a lot of stuff from scratch, and we then set up a refill shop, the Another Way shop in Penrith. So that's quite a drastic thing to do for most people.
Yeah.
But, you know, now it's easier for other people to shop plastic free.
I often wonder like we all do all this recycling, we don't go to all this effort to separate things, and then it goes into a truck. Where is it? I always wonder, what's the journey? Where does that end?
Yeah, I actually organised a school visit to Cumbria Waste when I was in sixth form. So romantic. And it was the most shocking thing I've ever seen, I think. So basically, like, all of that recycling gets dumped in this colossal warehouse. And I was just looking at this mountain, which was just the plastic that Carlisle had used for breakfast, basically. And then that just gets basically shunted across this conveyor belt, and bits that can't get recycled get picked out. But if it's contaminated with lots of unrecyclable things, the whole thing just gets put in landfill. And then it's in Cumbria, it's pretty much all incinerated or shipped off to other countries where it's just dumped in landfill.
Yeah, I think I remember saw something about some of it goes to like China and they just put it in landfills. Yeah. And it's just like, you can see like this weird colour steam coming off them. It's like, it's got to go somewhere, but it's like, I don't know, fire into space. I don't know. Like, or like, we need to come up with a situation where we don't create that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the meantime, we've still got hundreds and thousands and millions of tons of it. What are we going to do with it? It's here. What are we going to do with it?
Well, we need better recycling systems for a start, but we also need companies to take responsibility for their products.
Packaging and stuff, yeah.
So like have you seen the deposit return scheme where you can like take back plastic bottles and you get money if you post them into this machine? Yeah. So initiatives like that where actually you're using materials again and again, and they're designed to be reused in a circular economy instead of designed to end up in landfill.
Yeah.
And I think what we also forget is plastic is made out of oil, And it's fossil fuel companies who are benefiting off of us buying and using plastic, and they're the ones designing it so that it's just ending up in landfill. So we do need to transition to materials that can be reused again and again.
Yeah, because you see packaging or something that says like 30% recycled. I'm thinking that's good, but then I'm sure if I take that away, it can't be recycled because 70% of it isn't recyclable.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Well, yeah, and plastic can actually only be recycled once or twice because it kind of degrades every time you recycle it. So it's never going to have a lifespan that lasts more than a few years.
Yeah. So a few years ago, when I was in a band, one of my last, I don't know if Pete can pull this up on the screen, but I did our last EP was called Destruction Complete, and this was something that I wrote it in about 2015. It came out in 2016. So it was basically a similar sort of thing, especially with war going on as well, of the image which I gave to the designer who did a very good job. We're either going to destroy the planet by killing each other and the planet, or neglecting the planet. So it was kind of it's Die No More, Destruction Complete for Pete. The band's Die No More. So I had the idea of like half and half of one half of the earth destroyed by ourselves and the other half by neglect. Oh, there it is. You see that?
Yeah.
So that was the.
That's really powerful.
That was the thought that I had. What we're talking 9-8 years ago, just because of like all those sorts of things were happening at the same time. We were getting all the headlines about us damaging the planet and war at the same time, which neither are good for the planet at all. So the way it came, it was Andy Pilkington of Very Metal Art. He did it. I drew it on a piece of paper because I had this vivid image in my head. I wrote it down and I sent it to him. And within about a week, he sent me that, just as it is. There was like a couple of changes, but that was it. And it was just like, so that's for me. We're talking nearly 10 years ago. That's when I really started to. I think it was about the time when that video with the turtle as well.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things going on in my head. I was like, yeah, there's definitely changes we can make, and I think it's worse than people realize. And
yeah, and I feel like that sums up quite well how interlinked actually social problems are with environmental problems as well, because people don't talk enough about the fact that the climate crisis is a social crisis and it stems from inequality. You know, some people, the wealthiest people, consume too much at the expense of the poorest people, who are then becoming climate refugees or who are most at risk from climate changes like droughts and famines. And at the end of the day, if we make the world more equal and if we improve people's well-being, then they're not going to destroy the planet so much. So for me, it's about imagining this future which is better for people and for the planet.
They go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah. And then thinking, well, how can we create that better future? You know, how can we create green jobs that are better for people and can give people livelihoods, but at the same time they're creating this green transition to renewable energy? Or, you know, how can we design cities so that they're less polluted, which will help people's health? They have more green spaces and trees and parks that people can relax in, you know, which was so important for us during COVID when we realised the benefit of outdoor spaces. But at the same time, that's making more space for nature.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like some people treat this planet like we've got a spare one just waiting to. Well, we've knackered this one. We'll go move to this other one now. It's really not the case. It's a lot of that as well. It's all about like awareness, and even like celebrities, high-profile people getting on board, and because they obviously have power, and what they say gets heard by a lot of people as well. Yeah,
I mean, some celebrities are doing really great things and adding their name to the cause and supporting charities and all of that, but others, not naming names, are, you know, jetting off around the world, and they just have these colossal carbon footprints and are also, even worse, kind of creating this image that that's how everyone should aspire to live, that we all need to consume more and wear the fanciest clothes and drive the fanciest cars and have super yachts.
And not even consider how we're getting there, what we're using to do that.
Yeah. Or the effect on, you know, communities in the driest countries that are starving and, you know, facing heat waves and causing millions of excess deaths because of this celebrity's lifestyle choices.
Yeah. It's like in some countries, like say Africa, when they have like there's like a line of where like the richest one was on this side and the poor's on that side, literally right next to each other.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, I mean top 10% wealthiest people in the world consume 50% of all carbon emissions.
Wow.
So, and the top 1% of richest people produce the same amount of carbon emissions as the bottom 2/3 of humanity. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think when this video goes out, I think we'll pull that as a stat on the screen, because that's a lot to get your head around.
Yeah, and the top 10% of wealthiest people as well. That's anyone over a salary of £32,000 a year. So it's not even, for the UK, that is pretty much the average salary, right? So a lot of us are really responsible for this crisis, and that means that we have a lot of responsibility for doing everything we can to fix it. And not blame other people for it.
No, we all have a part to play. It's like I said, it wouldn't be a difficult thing for us all to have like initiatives of like making sure all your switches are off, not running the tap, not like having short showers, or what's your thought on like electric cars, electric vehicles? Is that the way forward?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. So we need to decarbonise transport. And part of that will be electric vehicles, especially for a place as rural as Cumbria, where it's so hard to get around with public transport. I think for people that live in cities or who can get public transport, obviously that is the best way and most efficient way of moving around, instead of shipping everyone in tiny moving metal boxes.
Yeah.
Because cars actually produce, they have massive carbon emissions just from producing them. So electric cars are still having a bad impact on the environment. And
because of the batteries and stuff.
Yeah, the lithium in the batteries is mined in places like the Congo, where there's a lot of human rights abuse, and it's very polluting as well. I think when we can recycle those minerals in the batteries, then that will be a good step forward.
Yeah, that would be a game changer, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think everyone who can afford to do so, or has the kind of ability to switch to an electric vehicle, probably should. But buying secondhand is a really important consideration as well.
Yeah, because obviously the diesels, are they going to stop diesel production by 2050, was it?
Yeah, they rolled it back. So I think it was 2037, and then they rolled it back.
They've rolled it back. I don't know when it was, but yeah, they've rolled it back again.
Yeah.
So that would be quite an important change as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem very late, because
it does.
They're so polluted.
30 was like, it's 6-7 years away.
Yeah.
But then going beyond that, it's like, well, how much? Is there any point? Like, there's no point then. The damage has already been done.
Yeah, and I think the car manufacturers are already kind of switching and investing into electric vehicles. Like, most of the car adverts you see on TV now are for EVs. And so the car manufacturers themselves were up in arms when the government rolled back the deadline, because
they'd made all this effort to try and get
they'd already switched. The market had already switched, and so that was an awful decision on behalf of the government. Yeah, one of many, but.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, what is your opinion of the political side of it? Obviously, there's big businesses, their role. Mm-hmm. What about how, like, especially our country? What about how good or bad are they doing?
Yeah, well, I think the UK government previously had quite a world-leading policy on climate change. At the IPCC, in the IPCC reports, and in the COP summits, where world leaders meet to discuss climate change and to make policies. The UK was kind of critical in helping to get net zero targets in law. And then last year, Rishi Sunak and the Tory party completely rolled back on all of these policies, and it made pretty much no political sense, because the vast majority of the public support climate policies. And as I said earlier, it didn't make sense to car manufacturers either, because the markets are already switching to. And it also made the UK a hypocrite, because suddenly we were telling other countries to have better policies, but we weren't backing that up with our own actions. So I feel like the UK is probably being laughed at on a global stage, but it also means that other countries now are relaxing their policies. Like Scotland last week, they relaxed their climate policies too, which is so sad to see. And they don't seem to be responding to the public's needs and cries for a system in which young people can grow up and live on a livable planet. So there's a huge amount the government can do, and they know what they need to do. They need to insulate houses. They need to make energy cheaper for everyone. This is what I was going to ask you.
So if you've got a top 5 or a top 3 of things that, what are the priorities of things that need to be addressed, would you say?
Yeah, so they need to stop subsidizing fossil fuels and actually tax fossil fuel producers. And then they need to lead the transition to renewable energy so that we can make energy clean and green and cheaper for everyone. I would say then public transport, improving public transport infrastructure whilst, making it cheaper to get the train and not 300 quid to get a train ticket to London.
It's ridiculous.
And then again, kind of making the transition to electric vehicles faster. And then making space for nature as well. So making sure that they're investing in tree planting, in protecting nature, wildlife, ponds, upland areas, so that we can, the UK is one of the most nature depleted countries, and we need to turn that around in order to solve climate change. So they are probably my top things. I think it's all the really expensive infrastructure changes that the government needs to come in on. But, it's also helping people to make the right decision. If you want to buy organic, plastic-free vegetables instead of fast, animal products that have been made in factory farms, then it should be cheaper to buy the vegetables than the animal products. So they need to be subsidising food that's good for us and good for our planet, and taxing food that's not.
Yeah, I think like sugary drinks, sweets, all the stuff that's bad for you. Some of it tastes the best. It's not good for you. Same with the planet as well. But you were saying it earlier. It almost makes you feel lucky to live in Cumbria as well, because we have such It's funny, you see someone from London or down south, and they'll go, "Oh, look, a sheep," and we're like, "Yeah, we have those. We see them all the time." But you kind of take that for granted, or like the lakes or the fells or things like that. It's hard not to take it for granted when you're here, but I more and more don't take it for granted all the time because of what's going on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the Lake District and living in the Lake District or on its doorstep makes you more connected to nature, and I think appreciate our natural world more, which then makes us want to protect it. But actually, the Lake District is even more nature depleted than London. We've only got 3% tree cover, and London is 13%.
How is that? Is that just because they've chopped them all down?
Yeah, because a lot of our fells are now grazed by sheep. So traditionally, they would all have been wooded, and it would be temperate rainforest, so it would be a really cool habitat. But obviously, over history, the fells became grazed, and now upland livestock farming is the main kind of method of land use in the Lake District. But we do need to change that because it's really destructive for biodiversity and climate. But there are farmers who are already kind of figuring out ways in which you can farm and improve nature as well. Like James Rebanks and the RSPB, they're bringing more cattle onto the land, which are actually better for the grass and the soil, reducing the number of sheep that they have, and making sure that there's a wide area they can graze, so there's still room for plants and trees to regenerate. And so we need that, but we also need reforestation projects on a large scale as well. And we all need to reduce the amount of meat we eat and just eat locally, grass-fed, and kind of view it as a treat instead of something we should eat every meal.
So is the ideal for us not to eat meat at all? Would that be best for the planet, or is it about balance?
I think it's about balance. I think if you tell everyone that they can never eat meat, that's not going to be very popular.
You'll have riots.
Exactly. And also, there are lots of people whose livelihoods depend on livestock farming, and especially in the Lake District, where it is an upland area, there's still room for that. But I would say if everyone reduced meat by half, then that would probably get us where we need to be, because the amount of meat we eat in the West compared to the global South is just massive. And it causes, again, this inequality because people in Africa are growing crops. They're sending them to Western countries where we feed them to animals, and then so that we can eat steak. And then billions of people in Africa and Asia are going hungry. And that's just so wrong for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do need to reduce the amount of meat we eat. But it can be like things like, I don't know, if you make a bolognese, like using 50% vegan meat mince and then 50% meat mince, that still makes a big difference.
Yeah. Over the time the vegan things have started to come out, I've tried a few things and it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's like, I don't know why people have got this stigma like it can't taste as good. It just can't. But Why would they not put all the effort into making it taste good so that people have like switch over?
Yeah, well, I went vegan probably 7 years ago now, and actually so much has changed in 7 years.
What are the biggest changes from going vegan then?
Well, I love it. I didn't really like cooking before, but then I just, because you have to make your own food taste nice, so I'm a really good cook now.
But did you notice changes in yourself though from, I mean, were you much of a meat eater before?
Not a huge meat eater, but I ate meat probably every day or every other day. And I did feel a lot better when, I did it mainly for health reasons, to be honest, straight away. Okay. And yeah, I had more energy and I got ill less often. So there were definitely physical changes. But I also felt happier, I think, because it just felt nicer, not having to kill animals to eat. And it's just fun. I like being creative and experimenting, and there's so many like vegan bloggers or recipes out there. And then, yeah, I think it's definitely my absolute favorite change I've made, to be honest.
Good.
But now there's like, I can have a burger or chicken nuggets or whatever I want.
The vegan version.
Yeah, exactly.
So they must be getting better at doing all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
I feel like 7 years ago there wasn't a lot of that on the market.
You're like, okay, it's vegan, but I'll eat it because I have to. But like now it's like, it's nice.
Yeah.
Makes it a lot easier for everybody. So do you do a lot of cooking then?
Yeah, mainly. Pretty much cook everything from scratch. I really love it. It's like my way of relaxing and being creative.
Fair enough.
I love making curry and Asian food. Yeah. My house at uni, I lived with 3 other vegans at uni, which was great. And we cooked together every night. And it was so nice. It was great.
So is that something you do with Another Way? That leads us onto the shop then.
Oh, yeah.
So you set up a shop, which I've been to. So it's also called Another Way, but it's spelt differently, as in way as in weight. So what was the thinking about behind that?
So actually, Another Way, the shop was named first.
Okay.
So yeah, 𝐒𝐻, because you go into the shop with your own container, you fill it up with just as much food as you need, and then you weigh it and just pay for the amount of food that you got. So we thought, we need to find another way to do this, one that doesn't have so much packaging and pollution.
Yeah.
So that was clever. And then I was like, I like that name. Maybe I can call my charity that, but WAY, because we need to find another way.
Because we need another way to exist, basically.
Yeah.
So how did that connection come about then?
So when we were going plastic free as a family, there were some things we just could not get without plastic, like rice, beans, pasta. And when we were in Devon on holiday, we visited the first zero waste shop in the UK in Totnes, and it was so amazing. I fell in love with it, and decided that we needed one in Cumbria. And then we met this woman called Zoe in Penrith, who was crowdfunding to set up our very own zero waste shop. So it was actually my parents who then set up Another Way, the shop, with Zoe. And I was setting up the charity at the same time, writing my charity commission forms. So all the profits from the shops go into the charity, and that's kind of the relationship that we have. But also it's this nice circle that Another Way, the charity, educates people and kind of says why we need to change. And then the shop enables people to do that. It gives them a method of easily reducing their waste.
That's cool. So they kind of work in harmony sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really nice having that community focus as well. So the shops have kind of acted as this hub for conversations. People go around, they mill around in the shops, and they chat to other people who were like-minded, who are trying to make a change too. And so that's then provided a really nice supporter base for the charity. We're now trying to expand Another Way, the charity, nationally.
Okay. So what would that involve?
So we're going to be using the Power of 10 app that I mentioned earlier with young people.
Is that available now?
Yeah, so it's currently being tested by 250 young people in Cumbria and Panama randomly.
Okay.
Yeah, one of our staff members lives in Panama this year, so she's got her local island on board, which is really cool. But yeah, the young people who are on it are already trying it out, giving us ideas, kind of testing it. So we now have new features that we're building, and then we're going to take it national and try and get thousands of young people on there So I have to figure out how on earth to run a national charity next.
Wow. Yeah, so what would be the vision for it, first it being Cumbria National? What's the vision for it then? So what will that allow you to do?
Yeah, so I mean, it will first, our vision is to create the largest ever community of young change makers taking action. So we're thinking, you know, thousands of young people across the whole world taking action in their communities, but empowered and supported through the Power of 10 platform. And we ran this festival in February in Reged in Cumbria. So that brought people together in person, which was just amazing. You know, there was such a vibrant atmosphere and people were so inspired. So we'd like to run those around the UK regularly. And then we hope to kind of become a national brand with a reputation, you know, like the big environment charities, Greenpeace and WWF. That would be cool if one day Another Way was like that.
It's certainly got the right sort of name. It does what it says on the tin. And with the logo and everything, it's obvious what it is. So yeah, as long as you're doing and saying the right things, which you are, I don't see why not.
Well, I think it's always difficult to create a movement, but that's what I want to do. And I think it has to be really authentic. It has to be community led. It has to be driven by young people. And it has to be, I think what sets us apart is we're about inspiring people. We're about positivity, hope and fun. It's not about shouting at people or about anger. And I think that's what will get people on board, and what's already really motivated young people in our test, the 250 young people we've already got, is they just feel so inspired that actually they can make a difference and a change, and that there are so many other people out there who are kind of on this journey with them. So I'm hoping that grassroots effort will turn into a movement and spread us nationally.
Yeah, because it's not just about what you are saying, it's how you say it. Yeah. How do you present your message? So with a platform like that, you have the opportunity to try many different things. Like, did you say you do like testing a podcast as well?
Yeah, so our young people, actually at this festival that we ran, we had a podcast tent. Okay. So we have these regional reps. They're incredible, passionate, proactive young leaders who are working with us to be community champions, to kind of make resources that are on the app. And so we got them to interview people like Tim Farron and other speakers at this festival. And then one of the Year 7s accidentally wiped the whole mic. So we had, you know, several hours of podcast recording that unfortunately got deleted.
Yeah.
So we learned, and we actually thought they were incredible, these young people, at interviewing the speakers. So we're helping them to create their own podcast made by teenagers, for teenagers, all about climate action and solutions.
But it'll be under your umbrella?
Yeah, it'll be under, Another Way in Power of 10. So I think it'll be called the Power of 10 podcast.
Perfect.
We're going to launch it on Spotify. They interviewed me for the very first episode.
Of course, absolutely, yeah.
Which was really fun. And it feels really emotional, I think, because I started as a teenager in school.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of supporting young people who were in my position. Mm-hmm. And if I'd had something like that at that age, I think it would have helped me so much.
Yeah, podcasting wasn't like mainstream like it is now. Like, a celebrity can just start a podcast like that. So now everyone knows what they are. But it's the barrier to entry for podcasting is so low. You just need a microphone, just record it, or a camera and just upload it.
Yeah, well, we're trying to do it online because our young people are kind of spread far and wide to make it accessible. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's a learning curve for me. I'm terrible at editing and tech and all of that.
Yeah, you need the right people in to do those jobs. Plus, you're too busy to be directly involved, of course.
Well, maybe.
But no, it's a good platform because then if anything happens, then you can create content and get it out there straight away.
Yeah, and for me, it's all about giving those young people agency and skills to make their voice heard. And, you know, at 15, 14, however old they are, the fact that they can have these conversations with key people within the climate movement is a really great experience for them.
It's a very unique situation to be in as well, isn't it? That you've got a platform that can keep you connected, not just with like young people, but older people as well. The audience of podcasting is very varied. There's the audio side, there's the video side. So that's another potential, as well as just standard social media, to reach a different audience or a wider audience as well.
Yeah, and for young people especially, I mean, most of the news that they hear is delivered by adults and older people.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that'll be really cool.
Something
for them.
by them for them.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
exactly.
Yeah. And in doing so, you'll still attract people who weren't necessarily your target audience, but it will reach them as well if you're saying the right things and you present it in the right way.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be very authentic. We agreed that there'll be lots of pauses, hesitations.
It's real.
Exactly.
It's real.
Exactly.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's more, like I said, it's more about what you're saying.
Yeah. And we also have a film that we made. We premiered that at the festival, and that's about my story and the work and the impact that Another Way has had. Kind of this power of 10 idea. So starting with my idea and with my dream, and then
you've kind of done it that way, haven't you?
Yeah.
Just spreading it. What was the film called?
The Power of 10.
Okay. Is it available?
It's on YouTube. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you. And yeah, I'm hoping that will inspire this movement. It's already been shown in churches and schools and all sorts of places.
Right, okay.
So, it's all about inspiring people that actually, you know, when faced with this incredibly complex global crisis, instead of shutting down or turning to despair or saying there's nothing I can do or no one else is doing anything, so why should I? Actually inspiring people, yes, you can do something, you can make a difference, and this is how. Yeah. And it's as simple as that.
Is any of this like taught in schools?
No, not really. I mean, the climate crisis, it's probably not even called a crisis in school curriculum, but it's in geography textbooks.
Right, okay.
And that's about it. So unless you take geography GCSE, most people in school don't learn about it. And even within textbooks, there's loads of kind of really bad narratives that say...
Well, it goes out of date very quickly, doesn't it, for a start?
Yeah, that's true. And also things that say, you know, it's just technology that can fix it, or it's too late, or it's too expensive. And all these things just make young people feel disempowered instead of actually giving them agency. So that's actually something we're working on. We've just got a grant with the University of Bath to do a research project.
I don't know how you keep on top of all these things.
So we're doing research into climate in textbooks and how young people identify these narratives and myths and how they can break them down. And we're hoping that we can then take that to exam boards and the Department of Education and actually get that changed and empower teachers as well to deliver climate education in a way that empowers their students.
That sounds exactly what you need to be doing. A lot of this it seems to be focused on communicating with the younger generation because obviously they are the future. So, like we said before, it's about teaching like schools. If it's part of what they grow up with, like if it was to the parents, some parents would care about it, some parents wouldn't. But if it's in school, they all go to school. Yeah. So they would all learn about it.
Yeah, it's definitely critical. But then there's also, you know, the fact that if we put too much of the responsibility on the young people, that's actually not that fair because it is.
That's fair. Yeah.
I felt sometimes that adults say, oh, it's okay because you're the hope and you're going to solve the planet. Yeah. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on my shoulders.
But that goes back to what you say rather than how you're saying it, doesn't it? In terms of like, it's not necessarily trying to put pressure on them. It's just making aware of, they need to, at the very least, they need to know what's going on. Yeah. Not just glossing over it and say it's going to be fine if it's not going to be fine.
Yeah. And I also think we need to have some quite hard conversations, saying, actually, you know, the richest people in the UK and every single adult in the UK has to change somehow. We can't just leave it to the younger generation. We can't just leave it to another country. We all have to change. And that will probably include some quite drastic habit changes, you know, cutting your meat and taking public transport.
There's things that we can do now.
Yeah. And I would much rather do it now out of choice than being told to do it by the government, to be honest. Yeah.
So there's other things, like I made some notes of things, because obviously I knew we were going to have this conversation about other things that companies could or have done. Like I remember having a joint bank account and the two people both getting the same letter. When it's like, well, why don't you just send us one letter to the both of us? That still happens. Like it doesn't make any sense. People giving e-cards instead of physical cards.
Yeah, I love
lots of things like that. I don't know about the research, but someone said to me using an air fryer instead of an oven.
Yeah, because it uses less energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So has that been proven?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're cheaper.
Because it seems like, when we've got one as well, we use one, but we never have the oven on.
No.
Very rare, unless it's a pizza, which some sort of physically won't fit in the air fryer. But like the food's cooked better, it's quicker, it uses because we've got a smart meter as well, it uses less electricity. But I don't know the stats. I don't know if anyone's done any research, but it seems to be better.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, well, if anything uses less energy, then it's better.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, there's changes like that we can make that are really kind of small and easy. And there's also, changes that are really impactful, like switching your bank, like you mentioned bank accounts.
Yeah.
Most banks in this country invest in fossil fuels, and that is basically funding the climate crisis.
Yeah.
So a massive thing we can do is switch our banks to one that doesn't invest in fossil fuels. So Nationwide, Triodos, the Co-op, all banks, Starling, they're all banks that are green and invest in renewables. And that's a really impactful thing that we can do. And then voting as well, making sure that we vote based on climate policies. I mean, there's not great options at the moment, but...
Yeah, the thing that gets me about voting is you'll see a lot of older generation who they've got their team.
Yeah.
And they'll stick with their team no matter what's going on. And I think that's really bad. Like, they're not actually paying attention to what's being said. Like, I'm not going to... They're on the opposition, so whatever they say, I'm not going to listen. I think that's really bad. Whereas as opposed to paying attention to what everyone's saying and going, okay, I don't normally go with this team, but I like what they're saying.
Yeah.
So changing sides or whatever, just going with what you think's best.
Yeah, and pressuring both, all parties to make better policies, because at the moment, frankly, no one has an acceptable climate policy.
A lot of their strategies are just throwing dirt at the other team, picking at them for what they've said or what they haven't done. They're not actually coming up with any solutions themselves. All they can do is pick apart their opponents.
Yep,
that happens a lot.
True. Yeah.
So they need to take a lot more responsibility and actually speak actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So it's very frustrating. That's very frustrating as well when you things like that.
Yeah, I mean, writing to MP is something that's so cliched, but actually, they do listen, and if they know that their voters are going to vote because of climate or nature or social policies or whatever it is, then they will change their manifesto and their policies. So, whether it's talking to MP, whether it's going on a march or a protest. I took my 80-year-old grandpa on a protest last year, which was really fun.
How did that go?
Well, it was his first ever protest, so he was quite nervous. It was a climate protest on Global Climate Day last year.
Okay.
It was in Stratford, near where they live. And I got him carrying a branch and a banner and marching through the streets, and he had a great time. He loved it.
Was that his first protest?
His first protest ever, yeah.
That's brilliant.
But it just shows that anyone can show up and can be part of a movement, which is then listened to, and the government will act on that.
Yeah, because they can't ignore it. Well, they can try, but like I said, with the world that we're in now, with social media and everyone's so connected, it's not just protests physically, it's like online as well. Yeah, and I mean, social media is obviously a force for good and bad, but it has been great in kind of catalysing the whole youth climate movement and inspiring and educating people. It's something we use regularly to try and put out both good news, to try and motivate people and what you can do, and then obviously kind of what our Power of 10 community is doing as well. Yeah. So there's obviously multiple things, multiple faceted ways you can communicate with people about what needs to happen. But yeah, there's so many aspects to this that it's almost like mind-boggling. And for some people it's like it's hard to comprehend. But like people like yourself, organisations that like a funnel. Yeah. So they say why don't we just focus on this for now? Yeah. And then we'll go into this, and then we'll go into this. Is that kind of how you look at it? Because you can't. Yeah. There's so many things to cover. You can't cover them all. Yeah, I like thinking of it as a ladder. So we have to take, we have to climb up one rung at a time instead of just jump straight to the top, because otherwise it's too overwhelming. If I had said I'm going to go plastic free tomorrow, I would never have done that. Whereas if I say I'm going to reduce by 2 things a week, then that is more achievable, and we can't beat ourselves up about not being perfect. I pledged not to fly 7 years ago because flying is probably the most destructive thing you can do for the climate. And I didn't fly for about 5 years. And then as part of my uni field course, we had to go to the Azores. And
I made the difficult decision to go and to fly. And I felt so guilty. But then actually, you know...
You've got to think about where am I going and why am I doing it?
Yeah, that and the fact that, you know, we could all take one flight every 2 years and that would be fine.
That's reducing rather than just cutting out, yeah.
Yeah, and not be, you know, if you beat yourself up about it, that's not helping anyone. So, yeah, it's about, for us, another way, communicating these small changes that people can make over a sustained period and then giving them all the tools and ideas and inspiration they need to do that. And I really love at the moment the communicating just the 4 biggest things you can do to make a difference. So number 1 is eat less meat, eat more vegetables. Number 2, clean up your transport. So reduce your flying, reduce using your car, use public transport or walk or cycle. Number 3 is greening your home. So insulating, you know, that can be things like double glazing or being more energy efficient, installing LEDs, and then if you can afford it or get subsidies, maybe installing heat pumps, solar panels. And then the 5th one is influence. So that's what we were talking about, using your voice to volunteer, join a community group, go on a march, push yourself out your comfort zone, write to your MP, and all of those things that petition for governments and businesses to change.
That's fantastic. That's really good. We'll put them in the show notes. That's it's clear, it's concise, and it seems doable.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why how long did it take to come up with that?
Well, I can't take all the credit. Actually, a scientist called Dr. Chris McDermott came up with those 4 actions. I added the 5th one, the influence.
No, it's valid though. It's valid.
Yeah, I think so. And he wrote a book called Operation Sustainable Human, and it's basically those 4 things. And his point is that if we start talking about, you know, 100 things you can do for the planet, it just gets too overwhelming and complicated. So it's just cutting it down and simplifying it. And those are the most impactful things that any of us can do. So now I just communicate those, and I love it.
I can see that as a clip from the show going out now. That's so it's things like that you've got to sort of condense things and make it simple for people to understand, that they were likely to actually do or take action upon. It's like a call to action, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, because there's this justice side of it as well, and the fact that while it's the wealthiest people who are most responsible for it, and therefore the ones who most need to change, there's a lot of actions that we can do if you don't have so much money or if you can't afford to make these big changes that actually save us money too. You know, things like energy, saving energy, buying secondhand, walking or cycling, or taking local holidays instead of flying. You know, all of these things are actually more affordable and accessible for everyday actions.
And also just like eating less meat, eating more veg, not just good for the environment, but good for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very... But those are the things that could be taught at school, or like the grassroots level, that people would just grow up going, well, that's you know, rather than it becoming like this visionary thing that's going, everyone's like, oh yeah, that's a good way of thinking. What if people just grow up thinking like that? Yeah.
Well, I hope that one day they will. I hope that they'll, you know, love the world that they live in so much and society that they won't need to kind of wish or dream of a better world because they actually live in it.
It's also like with social media, we get constant reminders now of what's going on, like what's bad, what's good, what needs to change, what's not changing. So it's obviously now it's more like I don't think you can go past most days without hearing something about the environment, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing that it's having to be talked about like that in the first place.
Yeah, I think the media has only just started to connect events and consequences of climate change with climate change. Like now when they talk about heat waves and droughts, they usually mention climate change somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think there still needs to be this connection between consequences for us as humans, as individuals, and our own actions, because otherwise people just think of it as something distant and unrelated to them. Whereas if we connect it to people's values, you know, the fact that if you love coffee might not be here in a few years' time because there won't be the right weather conditions for it.
Yeah.
Or if you like playing golf, well, your golf course is going to be flooded. Or, you know, if you are a Christian, or if people are religious, then connecting it to religious values of stewardship and protecting your planet. So I feel like there's messaging that you can tailor the climate crisis to every single person in their
There's always ways that you can connect it to different groups to sort of reach everybody.
Yeah. And health as well, like you mentioned, is such a massive thing because pollution, climate change is massively affecting human health. The chemicals in our water from plastic and from agriculture causing cancer and chronic health issues, and air pollution causing asthma and millions of deaths a year, and increased heat as well is making old people and chronically ill people really vulnerable. So solving climate change is not just to save the polar bears, it's to save our own health as well.
Yeah, it can all be packaged in a way that makes everyone aware of exactly what's going on. Well, I think we've covered everything. That was really insightful conversation. Is there anything else you want to mention or that you wanted to make sure you talked about while you were here?
No, I think we've covered quite a broad range of subjects.
Yeah, that's fine. So if people want to look you up or the charity up, is it just the usual? Is it just the name as it is? Yeah,
so you can search Another Way. We're on all social media, and our Power of 10 podcast is going to be launched on Spotify. And then also this week, and this week only, we're part of the Big Green Give Fund.
I saw about this, yeah. So what's this then?
So we have this match fund of £20,000 and all donations during the week will be doubled until we reach our target of 40,000.
Wow, okay.
And that's going to help us take this Power of 10 app nationally so that we can support
I see, right, yeah.
so many young people to take climate action.
Perfect.
So yeah, we've got a big crowdfunding campaign this week, and I'm really hoping that we reach our target.
Cool, perfect. Right, well, thanks for joining us. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and we'll do this again sometime in another few years when you've changed the world.
Let's hope. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Bray. If you like this video, please subscribe for more content.